Loved the course. It looked awesome. It looked very professional, very put together. And I was trying to put my finger on it because every time they go to Europe, it's not necessarily the landscape that makes courses feel this way, because the landscape, like, it definitely is different than the U.S., but like we have plenty of beautiful parks over here that we play on and stuff.
I think it's just because they have giant parks that have nothing else in them.
No, here's what I've landed on, okay, is the professionalism of the grounds is how I'm going to word it. But like their OB is all consistently marked with the stakes. You could see it very clearly. Just outside of OB, a lot of times was taller grass. So visually, there was no question. It was very easy to tell what's OB and what's not. And the placement of advertising, I think it's solely because there was less advertising at this event, way more tasteful. The advertising was like by the tee and stuff. It was placed in the branding of the event. The white and blue branding of the event just felt everywhere. Everything was pretty much white and blue except for like the Zuka flags and stuff. But when you got to the OB, there wasn't those like giant walls lining the OB and stuff like that. The course just looked more naturally beautiful because I think with there being less advertising, it just allowed the natural beauty of the course to shine through more. And like there was still like crowds out there. They still had like fence and stuff, but like you didn't have, there wasn't just a bunch of different loud artwork like trying to grab your attention everywhere. It was just, you were just welcomed into the beauty of the course.
Yeah, it was, I believe it was Champions Cup that was finally doing some advertisement that had like integrated color schemes. Because like we mentioned before, but like if you go to the PGA Tour events, if Foundation were to advertise at a PGA Tour event and our colors are black and gold, it doesn't matter. They're going to make our logo and text say whatever, but it's going to be in the color scheme of the event, or it's going to blend in.
It's at least going to be like white on like a.
They were doing like green and white to make everything kind of blend into the grandstands, and like, yeah, it may make you a little less visible, but they're not willing to sacrifice the look of the event and the style of the event for, you know, the whatever graffiti you want to throw on a wall. So
that was just Silas. That wasn't even construction.
Oh, dude.
Silas selected something violent for lunch back there. But I think that the
Silas, dude.
Silas, man. That's construction. We're just all over the place right now. The course, like, I understand the Pro Tour has to monetize, right? And so I don't really, it's a catch-22, I think, because like I think part of the reason the natural beauty comes through so much at a course like this is because there's not enough advertising. It just lets it come through. Now, there's some parks that, like, in the U.S., there is no natural beauty to let come through. Like, that's fair. We play some places that are just like, it is what it is. But some places, like, if we just let it do its thing, is very beautiful. It just gets commercialized by the banners lining every hole, by like the feather banners, there's many places we can put them, and like they're trying to monetize every inch of the course, which then dilutes all of it and makes it less effective.
It's a weird balance.
I don't know. That was just something I thought of, because even the baskets were all white with a blue flag. Like everything, there was just, it felt, you could feel an attention to detail out there that you just don't feel a lot of times. And it's probably just because the team running that, you know, this was a big stage versus the teams running the U.S. events are like, they're doing this every week. You know, there's just a different feel. So like, I think there's a lot of reasons for it, but that was what was like screaming through the screen at me, was just like, it felt very much like there was a lot of pride in this event.
I think a great thing that could come out of the European swing of the tour, because I've always said that I mean, there's nothing you can do about it, but like their park properties they play on are usually much better than ours. They just seem to have just like it. I mean, it's like, just to use an example, it's like if we had just a ready availability of like national park quality properties. Yeah. Like that's what you get over there. They just have more access to them, I guess. But I mean, one of the great things that could come out of the European tour is, you know, if like visually they are just taking it more serious at running those events and doing a better job and whatever it might be, then, you know, that'll eventually catch on and people will be like, hey, we need to start doing certain things this way because they're making us look bad. Like, you know, it's always good to have somebody pushing the standard, because it's, there's no doubt that anytime there's ever been an event, I've never seen a like professional level event in Europe that wasn't run like really well and everything looked really nice and in place. It does seem like there's this extra level of care. Yeah.
Now, the other thing I really liked was the commentary. I thought was great.
Yeah, they're always good.
I was trying to put my finger on it, and I landed on two things. One, they just talked about the golf. there wasn't a lot of, I remember when I blah, 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 blah. Like, there wasn't a lot of excess talking, which some people are going to dislike, some people are going to like. I enjoyed it. Like, it was just, they were locked in and focused on the golf, and you could tell they were trying, both of them were trying very hard to be professional in what they were doing, which I think added to the professionalism that was going on. Because, granted, I was watching the U.S. Open, and typically if you're watching a professional golf event and you're locked in, and then you turn on disc golf, it just like screams all of the stuff that disc golf does differently at you, because you just hear, like, the U.S. Open obviously was like a top-end broadcast for golf, and like it was very well done, very professional, obviously. They said that I think NBC or whoever was covering it had a bigger team covering the U.S. Open than they do the Super Bowl.
Wow.
Crazy.
That's crazy.
Wow. But anyways, but when I was watching disc golf, I didn't feel that jarring. Like, it felt like a lower budget because, duh, I mean, we're talking millions of dollars lower, but it didn't feel nearly as jarring. And I was trying, again, just think through what is different. And the one thing that came through was the commentators were trying to hold themselves very professional. They didn't do a lot of joking around. They didn't do a lot of straying from what we're seeing. And the second thing, I think this was even the bigger thing, I don't know how to put this, but it felt like they genuinely cared. Like, it felt like when they got excited, they were actually excited, not trying to act excited.
Yeah.
And like, they let
the one thing you can't fake is a commentator.
They let their feelings come through. Like, when someone threw a bad shot, they just were willing to just be upset. Like, be like, oh no. You know what I mean?
think they're just, I think that, like, sometimes the European commentators are more blunt.
Yeah,
like,
that might be it too.
They tell it how it is sometimes. With,
but then, like,
shots.
there were some shots that, like, I watched, and to the viewer at home, it didn't feel like that crazy of a shot, but the commentary's mind was blown, and that made my mind get blown by it.
Yeah.
Like, it was similar to Bryson going over to U.S. Open. Bryson getting up and down on that last hole. It was hard to relay how difficult that shot was through the camera, right? But when you had, or it might have been earlier, you had Bones, who was like one of the all-time great caddies, saying that it was a top 10 up and down of all time. That, like, speaks to you at home of, like, holy cow, that was a crazy shot.
Sometimes with golf,
it, like, gives you context.
It, right.
That's kind of what I was feeling over there, because I had no reference for this course. I think this was even a newer layout. I hadn't watched the Turku Open previously, but I think this was even a new layout to them. But I had no reference for how hard some stuff was. You couldn't tell how uphill and stuff. But someone would throw a shot, and the commentary team mind would get blown, and not like a fake mind blowing. Like, it felt very like, this guy genuinely can't believe what he just saw this player do. And it made me go, holy crap, I can't believe he just did that. And then I, like, sat back, I'm like, Hunter, you have no idea. That could have been a 100-foot shot. You don't know.
No,
but, like, I felt it. I got excited because the commentary team, you could feel it in their bones. They were genuinely blown away by what they were watching.
That's an important role to add context, because especially, and disc golf is similar to golf, and where sometimes things that look routine are difficult. And I think, like, for instance, one of the things that I always like is when somebody throws a really good drive on a hole and you hear a commentator say, like, I haven't seen a drive land that far all day, or, like, I don't know if I've ever seen a drive get to that spot. Like, say things like that to really reinforce how good of a shot something was, so that you can appreciate it. Because sometimes, it's a game of landing in the middle of fairways. So sometimes you need a little bit of help to, like, understand the difficulty of the shot, or set it up, before the shot even happens. Talk about how difficult it's going to be, what has to be avoided. Give us context so that if the shot is executed, we're already expecting it to be super difficult. And that's part of the role.
That was one thing they did too, is before, I forget what hole it was on, but there was a certain hole that had, like, a sweet spot for where to land. And they were talking about that pre-drive of, like, this is the sweet spot area.
Yeah.
And then Nicklaus threw it about 60 feet or 100 feet. They were talking in meters, which made me just kind of, a lot of math was going on in my head. But he threw it well past the sweet spot. And so once it sailed over the sweet spot, they were able to provide that context, because they had already laid the groundwork of, like, this is where players are trying to get during the flyover. And then when he sailed through it, they had this, like, oh my word, and that's like 60 feet past the sweet spot. I've never seen a drive get there. And again, instantly my appreciation for what Nicklaus just did went through the roof, and I'm like, this dude's on fire. This dude's going off. I had no reason to know that. It looked like a pretty routine shot for him, but it's just like, I now had context for how good it was. I don't know. Really enjoyed it. Just some thoughts. Now, speaking of the U.S. Open.
We're pro Europe.
Speaking of the U.S. Open, I did notice, because Brody had brought this up during debate night, And I had never paid attention to it because their commentary on golf just flows so well. And he was talking about, because I had brought up how when Ian threw it to Perkins back at Beaver State, it was like always jarring. And poor Perkins always sounded out of breath. And like he didn't know who he was about to get thrown to. And it just like broke everything up. And Dustin, who was a commentator, he was like, well, what sport do they like? So many sports, like they don't use the on-the-ground commentary team to do commentary. And Brody goes, they do in golf. And I was like, interesting. So I just paid attention a lot.
They have a ton of them usually.
I paid attention a lot this weekend. And how they were using it at the U.S. Open was basically every important shot, because Rory and Bryson were the two that coming down the stretch, they were the ones that you were seeing every shot. There's also like Patrick Cantlay was in there too, but really Rory and Bryson, you needed context for every shot. And they would just let the on-the-ground guy take over the commentary. So they would be like if Trevor was my on-the-ground guy, they would be like, and now Rory's on the 16th. Trevor, what do you see? Yeah. And then Trevor would take over and be like, yeah, he's got a 7-iron. It's going blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of, tailwind. I think he's going to try to land this short and let it roll onto the green.
This ball's on a really good line, headed right at the pin.
And then as soon as he hit it, they'd be like, oh, he's not happy. And they were giving you context that I couldn't see. They're like, Rory's not happy with it. It looks okay, but I think it's just going to roll off the back edge of the green. It looks like he kind of hit it too thin. And then that was all on the ground. And then it came back to the booth for the booth to be like, bring you back into that world and jump. Booth was almost handling transition.
It's almost like an alley-oop. If you notice, the booth really takes over before the shot, and then well before the shot, and then when the ball is on the green. So like if a great shot is hit, let's say Jim Nance is the main guy, and he's got David Faraday on the ground or whatever, because a lot of times they have like teams of like 6 of them, and they'll be like, so and so's on holes 10, 11, and 12. And yeah, they'll pick it up. This ball's on a really good line. It's headed right for the pin, and they kind of leave it there. And when it lands, Jim Nance takes back over. Wow, what a shot! He's gonna be putting for birdie. And then obviously on the putts, they're kind of taking that over. They'll maybe get the read from another guy. But you're right, they let him take the wheel because they understand that guy's standing right there. A golf ball is really hard to track.
Yeah.
And even with all the Pro Tracer they have now, you can never get the best idea, especially on approaches towards the green, until hearing those commentators talk you through the shot is the best way to get it across.
Well, because imagine just to bring
really good system.
To bring it to disc golf, right? Like imagine we're like, okay, Paul's on the tee on 17. Connor, you're down there. What are you seeing? And Connor's like, look, he's been going fairway driver all week, but we have a ripping tailwind. He actually disced it down to a buzz right now, but everyone else stayed with their shot. It's going to be very interesting to see. Yeah, okay, it looks like it's flying great. The tailwind's definitely carrying it. It looks like it's going to cover the OB. That should be in a great spot.
Yeah.
Versus the commentary team in the booth,
they see
what we see.
Right.
So they're guessing just as much as you're guessing at home. Now they can know the course and give more context, but when you're on the ground, you can just see so much more.
Some of the best commentary we got, man, was Terry Miller in that backpack doing the live smash.
Because especially when the camera cuts and following the disc, the guy on the ground can be like, oh, Paul's ticked. As it's mid-flight, oh, Paul's ticked. It looks like that might have came out a little early. It looks like he's getting lucky. He has no idea where that's going to end up. That's so much more context than we get right now.
In the booth, they have to react anyways, so you might as well let somebody else talk through the shot and then react when you're supposed to. They're really only meant those guys in the booth, they're in that sport, they're really exclamation points.
Yeah, and
the way they're doing it now.
It felt like they kind of handled the transition to make sure it's
so smooth you don't notice it until you listen.
I had never paid attention until Brody said that, and then this week I was like, I just noticed they basically had I think Smiley was with Bryson and Bones was with Rory's group. They were doing 80% of the commentary. It felt like they were just throwing it to them, and they had already read the putt beforehand, and they're like, yeah, this one's gonna break really. Bryson, I don't know if he's giving this enough credit where he's lined up. I had it 2 feet left of where he's aiming, blah blah.
And here's another key thing.
Oh, he's gonna miss this inside.
Another key thing to mention is because they mic everything up so well. There's a mics all over the greens, all over the tee box, near the caddies. The commentators in the booth do not feel like they have to feel dead space. I mean, it goes dead silent some of the times on the Pro Tour. Well, I would say
on golf.
Yeah, on the Pro Tour mix, sometimes when they stop talking, it just gets a little too quiet because they don't have enough audio to fill. But on golf, they know if I let this sit, I'm going to catch something the caddy's saying to his player or whatever it might be, and it works out great.
Yeah. Now, obviously, miking the course, we're not there yet.
No.
But we do have the on-the-ground guys. I just think we're misusing them, is what I learned this weekend. Because even the way the European commentary team, I don't think they had someone on the ground. They might have, I don't remember. But the way the European guys were talking, like they were doing a very good job of picking up when I think it was.
Yeah, it helps when they know the course better.
Mari Villman, I think on like hole like 13 or 14, one of them were like, it was if you attacked the green, it could get very dicey. He disked back to a mid-range. And they were able to provide that context of like, it's very interesting. He has not gone mid-range all week, but he's going mid-range in this situation, just trying to make sure he gets a 3. And then when it came out his hand, they instantly picked up of like, that doesn't have enough power. This could get really dicey for him. And then he got lucky through the trees. And like, they were doing a really good job of that. I don't know. Just something I noticed.